Tom Downey here for the Cowboys Report. We're about to break down everything you need to know about a potential signing of Stephon Gilmore by the Dallas Cowboys. Before we get there, though, if you want the Cowboys to sign Gilmore, like the video. Let's see how many of you want to bring him to Dallas. Of course, the breaking news earlier this morning, fairly early because the NFL is wild, man. Stephon Gilmore is being released by the Patriots. Now, there is some timing stuff here. This move cannot be made official until 4 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, so there is the chance of a trade potentially by somebody, but it is a bit of a surprise. Gilmore had long been linked in trade rumors dating back to last year. He has not played this season. Remember, Gilmore is on the PUP list right now with a quad injury. We will discuss the medicals, which is a huge factor here for the Cowboys and any team. But make no mistake, there will be plenty of interest depending on the contract Gilmore wants. Again, we'll dive into that fully momentarily. But he will have interest on the market. If you're a contender, you pretty much always need cornerback help. That's how life works in the NFL. And there are plenty of teams who need cornerback help, maybe even more than what the Cowboys do. But when you go through the top weaknesses for Dallas on their roster right now, one of the ones that very much jumps out is corner. Obviously, Trevon Diggs in the midst of a potential defensive player of the year type of season. So because of that, it does make some sense that the Cowboys could have interest in upgrading over Anthony Brown. And as we'll get into, I don't know if Gilmore is what he was at his peak. I would lean towards not. But I think he's still better than Anthony Brown. I think that surely Gilmore, ignoring the contract stuff right now, is better than what Anthony Brown is. Now, I also mentioned the interest in Stephon Gilmore. The medical's got to get checked out, contract, blah, blah, blah. But just in the player, I think there's going to be significant interest. So there could be a team, maybe one that's a bit more desperate out there for cornerback help, that could trade for Stephon Gilmore and entertain the risk of the contract and the medical and all that good stuff. I will also make note, this verbally here, that Tad Prescott, Dak's brother, had tweeted out earlier this morning, a couple years ago, Stephon Gilmore told him he wanted to play for the Dallas Cowboys. So at minimum, I think there is some level of interest in both sides. And will that be a signing? I don't know. That is still to be determined. In general, we have learned to not get our hopes up for these things. But at minimum, Dallas should be exploring this. And if they don't, I got issues with the organization right there. So what do you guys think? I already asked you about the likes, so now you can comment as well if you don't want to sign Stephon Gilmore. But what do you think? Would you sign Stephon Gilmore if you're the Dallas Cowboys? Y for yes, N for no. This is the pinned comment on today's video. So you get the ad break here on YouTube, scroll on down, and let me know. Let's talk about the medical stuff. There are 4 things that are not necessarily deal breakers right now, but could be major issues for any team, the Cowboys included, as it relates to Gilmore. Now, Gilmore tore his quad late last year, and there are conflicting reports out there on just how healthy he actually is. Is he going to be out? Remember, he's on the PUP list right now, which would cost him 6 weeks with the Patriots, and of course, we're now entering week 5. You know, is there a situation where the Cowboys are concerned about that quad? Does it not check out medically? Is he not close to being in game shape right now? There is at least the possibility that Gilmore, might only play half a season for you. That he might not be out there in time for, week 8, week 9. He probably would not play for the Cowboys until after the bye. So the medical side of this, at the minimum, must check out. The Cowboys have brought players in, notable names, and not signed them because the medical was flunked. Eric Berry, for example, remains unsigned, despite at one time being the best safety, if not the second best safety or whatever, in the NFL, and no one signed him because his medical has been a failure. Now, the Cowboys have to do some work here. They have to get the medical stuff as best they can, look into it. I don't think they would just blindly sign somebody who hasn't played since hasn't played at all this year, missed time last year, and as we'll get into, was not 100% and back to his prime form last year. So there is some background stuff that has to be investigated. Now, I had told you guys last night was the only night we were going to do this, but it's Stephon Gilmore. We'll bring it back at least for one more day, maybe more at this point since I lied last night in the end. I didn't plan on lying, but hey, here we are. Jersey giveaway. Here's how you can get a 125% deposit bonus and a Cowboys jersey as well. When you head over to chatsports.com/bet and you use promo code Cowboys125 and you put down at least $100, that gets you two things. A, the aforementioned 125% deposit bonus and either a CeeDee Lamb or a Zeke Elliott jersey. Official Nike jerseys in the style that you just saw, both colors going both ways there. Email us, jersey@chatsports.com, if you want in on that deal. Look, we'll need your BetUS account number, a screenshot of your first bet, your jersey picks and size, but that's a little bit complicated. I get it. So just email us. We'll hook you up, jersey@chatsports.com. Now, back to Gilmore here, and this is kind of the demand in the market overall. As I mentioned, tons of teams are going to have interest in Stephon Gilmore. I think that's going to be the case, and there's going to be teams that want to add him in the end. There is a report from Josina Anderson, which is it's right from Gilmore's camp, that he wants $15 million per year. That's too much. Like, that doesn't actually make sense for where we're at in the NFL season. If there's some funny numbers, I'll explain, but Stephon Gilmore, cut by his team, barring, a trade here, is asking for borderline top 5 cornerback money. He's not asking for the Jalen Ramsey, etc., but he is asking to get more than James Bradbury. He's asking to be one of the highest paid top 8 corners in the NFL, coming off a massive injury, coming off not playing this year, and doing it in the middle of a season when there's not all the free salary cap dollars available the same way it is in the offseason. I think $15 million is a bit of a wild ask. That doesn't really make any sense to me. Like, that's too much flat money. Now, there is a point here that I want to make on top of this in terms of how $15 million, as weird as this might sound, might look more like $3 million. You can manipulate the deal to a pretty heavy extent. You can add fake years if it's a one-year deal. You can backload the deal if it's a multi-year deal, which, again, I'd be a bit surprised by that one. With the funny stuff you can do with the salary cap, you can bring down that $15 million per year, which is going to be prorated to more like $10 million this year because he's already missed time. And it would end up being more like $3 or $4 million on your salary cap. That's doable for almost every team in the NFL, including the Dallas Cowboys, who have under $5 million in salary cap space. But I think the Cowboys would prefer Gilmore, with Kelvin Joseph, Deshaun Wright, recent high investments, as more of a one-year deal. And I think they'd want to keep that price tag more. It's like a flat $3 or $4 million, not a manipulated pay money down the road $3 or $4 million. So with that in mind, I'm very curious how you guys answer this particular question. What is the most that you would pay Stephon Gilmore, per year? Get your votes in for me in the comments section right now. Let's talk now about Gilmore, the player. He wasn't as good last year. We're talking about 2020 because we have not seen him in 2021. The player that has been out there in 2019 versus 2020, not been great. There's a big difference there. Completion percentage went from awesome to still solid. Yards per target went from awesome to still solid. Touchdowns went from awesome to, okay, still awesome in the end. But the pass breakups, the interceptions, they plummeted. Now, I think part of that was teams just didn't throw at Gilmore as often. That's fine. But I also want to point this out. He's 31 years old. Stephon Gilmore is an aging NFL player. if you were to match Gilmore's salary demands and not go with a low-risk one-year deal, you do run the risk of paying for the name and not necessarily the production. Now, I think Gilmore and Diggs could work. I'm not really that concerned about a potential scheme fit. I think Dan Quinn would be able to make that work, I think, in the end, even though I do think Gilmore fits in better schemes than others, as all corners do. But I do want to bring this up, that I don't think you're getting 2019 Defensive Player of the Year Stephon Gilmore. My question is, can you get a substantial upgrade over Anthony Brown on the cheap? If that's the case, well, then let's ride, baby. Now, if the Cowboys sign Gilmore, I mean, you guys know we'll be live no matter what. Hit that big red button and subscribe today, youtube.com/CowboysTV. But you guys are watching here on YouTube. All you have to do is simply hit that big red button and subscribe right now. The other part of the, well, gotta sort this out stuff is the roster crunch that is coming for the Cowboys. They're carrying 6 corners right now. Trevon Diggs, Anthony Brown, Jordan Lewis, Nashawn Wright, C.J. Gordon is a special teamer, I know, Maurice Kennedy, and then Kelvin Joseph at some point, I think, will be coming back from IR. Carrying 8 corners, if Joseph does return, that's not really something NFL teams often do. And beyond that, there's already a roster crunch coming for the Cowboys with all those players on IR. Neville Gallimore, DeMarcus Lawrence, Michael Gallup, maybe Sean McEwen, maybe Tristan Hill, Kelvin Joseph, potentially a Tristan Hill, La'el Collins from suspension. You got to clear roster spots for those guys. Now, with the release of Jalen Smith, I believe they're at 52 of the 53, if my math is right, which might not be, factoring in the return of COVID players like Keanu Neal and Bradley and I. So in the end, you've got to cut some buddies to bring all these players back to your active roster. Now, maybe you could just IR stash Kelvin Joseph for an entire year, would put you behind the 8 ball next year, but maybe you want to go all in terms of winning right now. So who would you cut? Because you have to at some point, maybe it's not a 1-to-1 right now, but down the road it will be. Who would you cut to make room for Stephon Gilmore? Get your votes in for me in the comments section. Now, I know the name you're going to put in there is Anthony Brown. I do want to bring this point up. That does help you from a roster math perspective. Great, not a problem. It doesn't save you anything, though, in terms of the salary cap. Cutting Anthony Brown does not result in any savings from a money perspective. That is because Anthony Brown is a vested veteran. His stuff is guaranteed. You wouldn't save anything. I'm sure there is some offset language, so maybe it's saved like $1 million, like you might end up saving with the release of Jalen Smith. But I wouldn't expect very much from that perspective. I'm not sure if Maurice Kennedy counts as a vested veteran, so from a money-saving perspective, he actually might make a bit more sense, and maybe you would make Anthony Brown then your backup nickel behind Jordan Lewis, but that's just the money side of it for Anthony Brown in terms of I know he's going to be the name so many of you put in there. So to recap then, at minimum, when it comes to Stephon Gilmore, the Cowboys must explore this option. He's too good of a player in the past to go, we like our guys, we're fine. That said, it is not as simple as just do it. You got to check the medical, got to check the contract, got to check what his demands are, got to see how he's feeling health-wise and if he's still a good corner. And, of course, if he does get cut and there's no trade, then there are other teams who are going to have interest. The Bucs might just, Gilmore might say, all right, I'm going to go to Tampa. He might just decide that. It's not as simple as I'm just going to sign him. It takes 2 to tango. But if the cost is right, if the medical checks out, you do it. You simply do it if you are the Dallas Cowboys. He's too good of a player, I still think. Assuming everything checks out, yes, the Cowboys absolutely should be in pursuit of Stephon Gilmore.